Yo! Welcome back to One More Mana. My name's Derek, and today I am so excited to do our very first Patron featured deck tech. And I hope I can do it justice. This deck looks insane. This deck looks so much fun, and there's a few things in here that, we're on the same wavelength with some of the stuff we do, so I appreciate that for sure. So today's deck was sent to us by Mason, aka EDH Dad. And without further ado, the commander is Borborygmos Enraged. Borborygmos is a whole lot. He is 4, 2 red, 2 green for a 7/6 trampling Cyclops. And just between it being just a massive trampling Cyclops and the art, this might be the most rule card I've ever seen in my life. Now, that doesn't just end there. When he deals combat damage, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your library. You put all the lands in your hand, and then the rest dump into your graveyard. And now, to me, the most exciting part, at instant speed, you can discard a land, and Borborygmos can deal 3 damage to any target. Now, Borborygmos is awesome for so many reasons, but with that last ability, especially at a time now where planeswalkers are everywhere with War of the Spark, being able to just discard a land and just throw 3 damage at a planeswalker is amazing. And plus, throwing 3 damage by itself is going to be enough to take out a lot of the problematic creatures in the format. But hey, if you need to do more, just discard more lands. And we have plenty of lands in this deck. So this is just such a great way to clear the board, control the board, and worst case, throw some damage to the face and you need to take somebody out. And then obviously with an 8-mana commander, this deck has plenty of ramp to get the deck going, get it started. Just start flinging lands at people. So taking a look at the creatures, there's a few I really do want to highlight, and one I'm going to save for a little bit later. So the first one is Avenger of Zendikar. This shouldn't be too much of a surprise in any deck that has any type of land theme to it, or really just any green deck that ramps. It's such a powerful card with the landfall triggers, and in a deck that's going to have so many lands out because you're ramping, you get so many tokens. And even when it's not a token-themed deck, just to be able to have that much of a board presence, those little plants can get big real fast with all the ramp there is. The next 2 cards are in the same category. It's going to be Eternal Witness and Green Warden of Marasa. These are so important because with Borborygmos' first ability, if you kind of start utilizing that, you're going to end up with a lot of stuff in your graveyard. And we're not in black, it's Gruul, so you don't have as much of the reanimator stuff. But green does have a lot of strong effects to get stuff back to your hand, and these both do an amazing job of that, because that way, with this deck, having lands in hand isn't a bad thing, but every once in a while, you might need that specific card that got milled to your graveyard. These are just great ways to get it back. And then the last creature I'm going to talk about is Tunneling Geopede. This is so amazing. I had actually never seen this card before. It's essentially just impact tremors for lands, which is just so cool because impact tremors is great. You can get a lot of creatures out, but especially with the way I love to ramp, I'm always throwing more lands out than I am creatures. It's almost inevitable. And to be able to start hitting everybody, picking everybody for one every time a land enters, this just seems ridiculous and so powerful, especially with some of the ramp we'll get to later. The 2 artifacts I have to look at are Illusionist Bracers and Rings of Brightheart. Being able to double this ability is just insanely powerful. It essentially just makes our engine of just throwing damage around so much more efficient and really keeping the board clear or just throwing a bunch of lands at somebody's face. It gets there even faster with these. The next 2 cards fit into a similar category where they're in a lot of lands matter type decks. Crucible of Worlds. We're flinging lands everywhere. We're discarding lands, throwing them at people's faces. Being able to just get it right back and then play it. This is amazing. We don't have to worry about making land drops. We can throw the land at somebody's face and then just play it out of the graveyard for the land drop. Crucible is insane in a lot of decks, but in this deck, it's great because you never have to worry about holding lands to play. You just throw them wherever you want with no regards for anything else. And then the next one is Horn of Greed. I love Horn of Greed. I love to run way too many lands in all my decks. I have non-lands matter decks that are up near 40 lands, and this is a card that just takes so much advantage of that because there are a lot of decks that are going to function the mid to low 30s in lands, and I've seen some with even less. And this is just rewarding you for always hitting your land drops. And especially when you get into cards that give you extra land drops per turn, which there are plenty of, this is just such a ridiculous way to just have a continuous card draw engine and always keep your hand full so you can be throwing lands at people. And there's another one, you might have seen it pop up, that I will for sure be getting to later. I almost can't even contain myself. I'm excited. So looking at the enchantments, Keen Sense and Snake Umbra are ridiculous. Because essentially, every time Borborygmos, if you throw a land at somebody's face, you're going to draw a card. With all the lands, it might be another land. You just throw it at somebody's face again, draw a card. And you can get into chains like this of just drawing card after card after card after card and throwing them at, just chucking them at people's faces. And sometimes in a lot of decks, when you get, full of lands, you don't need any more land drops, it's disappointing, but another land. And that could be the downside of playing 40-something land decks. Not so much with these, because this just turns into, I don't need this, throw it at you. Oh, I don't need this either, I'm going to throw this at you. And you're drawing cards for it. These are just so powerful, and the fact they don't say combat damage, they just say damage, makes it so perfect in this deck. These next two work in combination in just a ridiculous way, and it's Abundance and Sylvan Library. Oh my gosh, so essentially how this works is, with Sylvan Library, you get the 3 draw triggers because for some ridiculous reasons, it says to draw the 3 cards. With Abundance, it's a replacement effect. So instead of drawing the 3 cards, for each instance, it replaces it with looking until you hit a land or non-land and then putting it into your hand. The insane thing here is, because it's a replacement effect, you keep all 3 cards. So if you're able to get these 2 out, not only during a draw step are you just getting 3 cards without the normal, downside of a Sylvan Library, but on top of that, you get to pick land or non-land for each one. This is, oh my gosh. Now, I'm not a rules expert, far from it, so if I'm screwing this up, please tell me, I'm sure you will. But I'm pretty sure this is how it works, and I'm pretty sure that's broken. Looking at the Sorceries, 2 All-Stars, just amazing cards I really have to point out are Creeping Renaissance and Splendid Reclamation. These cards are so good. So essentially, we're going to end up with tons of lands in our graveyards because we're discarding cards, throwing damage at people's faces, all that good stuff. Well, this is going to reward us in such a crazy way for it, because, and in different ways, obviously. So Splendid Reclamation, this is going to reward us. If we're discarding lands, throwing them at people's faces, play Splendid Reclamation, get them all back onto the battlefield, all on the field, crazy ramp, all the mana we could ever want. Well, let's say we have enough mana. That's where Creeping Renaissance comes in, because they come back to our hand. Plus, it has flashback, so if it gets milled to Borborygmos' first effect, you can still cast it. And it says any permanent type, so if you do happen to want creatures back to your hand, or enchantments or artifacts, there's some strong ones we just talked about, you can do that too. But in my mind, you always want to just get all those lands back and just throw them right back at people's faces. And then, super unsurprising, but Life from the Loam's in here. Of course, this card is just, it's always powerful, but in this deck, it's even more broken, because then you can get the engine going, mill some cards, bring some lands back to hand, discard them all, throw them at people's faces. Next turn, 2 mana, get 3 back, and get the engine going again. This is, I run Life from the Loam in decks that don't even have graveyard synergies because it's such a powerful card. And in this deck, it just utilizes its power perfectly. And the last one I want to talk about is Brass's Bounty. This card is so good, and it's actually, it's so cool that you put it in here, because in a lot of green decks that you want huge, crazy ramp effects, there's cards like Traverse the Outlands and Boundless Realms and stuff like that. But the thing that limits with that is you only get basic lands. And I've noticed running those cards a lot, I fail to find half the time. I might have 10 or 15 lands out because I've been ramping hard. I cast a Boundless Realms, and I only find 3 basics. Well, this solves that problem, because with Brass's Bounty, you don't have to worry about failing to find lands. You're getting treasures for all the lands you have. So instead of hurting you for ramping early game and having all your basics out, this is actually going to reward you for it. And obviously, just another shout out to Mason. This is just one of those subtle things that I think just shows how good you are at deck building, because a lot of decks, I'd probably just throw in a Boundless Realms and not think about it, not realizing the utility that you get and the extra utility you get from a Brass's Bounty. Looking at the instance, we have some staples in red and green, but the one I have to talk about, because I will talk about it in any deck it is in, is Crop Rotation. Being able to put a land into play at instant speed is powerful. I don't care what deck it is in, this is powerful, because you get to get any land you want in an instant speed at any point, and we're putting a land in the graveyard, and we have tons of ways to get those lands back, we know. So this is just, it synergizes perfectly, and being able to tutor, normally there's a reason lands can't be played at instant speed. So if you're looking for that Glacial Chasm or trying to get a Valakut on the end step, it's a great way to sneak it in. And then look at the Planeswalkers as Freyalise. This is just such a powerful card. It gives you card draw, it gives you removal, and it gives you ramp. And not to mention that ramp is making creatures to protect itself. This card is just, it's as a commander, it's obviously powerful. It can be in elf decks, and in this deck, having that utility, especially in 1 and 2 color decks, you always want to have flexibility, and this gives you that utility to do a variety of things at any point in the game. Looking at the lands, obviously the lands of the all-stars of the deck, so I'm going to point out a few that I just love. The first 2 are Command Beacon and Cavernous Souls. The reason why I love both of these is you don't want to be wasting mana. So Command Beacon is going to make it so you don't have to keep repaying commander tax, and you can keep An 8 mana general is already enough. You don't want to be paying too much more. And Cavernous Souls is, you don't want to be casting an 8 mana general and have it countered. That could be devastating in this deck and in any deck. Because you have a lot of ramp, but it's hard. If you start paying 8 and getting it countered, you got to wait a whole other turn and pay 10 mana just to get it on the battlefield the first time. That can be tough. So having to make, having that safety net, knowing you can't be countered, is a great feeling. Glacial Chasm is another one. This is an all-star in any deck it's in. It is so powerful. In any deck where you can kill people without combat, this should be in there. Half the decks that even kill people with combat, you want it in there, because just to be able to not take damage is so good, and not enough decks run enough land removal. So a lot of times this is going to stick. If you get in a situation where you realize Borborygmos might be able to just throw lands and kill everybody, you just need 2 turns to do it. A lot of the time, Glacial Chasm could buy you those 2 turns, and sometimes even more. Another one is Kessig Wolf Run. Kessig Wolf Run is so good. We have all this mana. We're ramping so hard. We can just dump a whole bunch of mana into this, make our commander massive, and let's smash somebody for face and kill them out of nowhere. Sounds fun. And the last land I'm going to talk about is Petrified Field. I love this card. This is such a cool card. Basically, you can sack it and then bring any land back from your graveyard to your hand. And again, we just mentioned Glacial Chasm or maybe Kessig Wolf Run. They are targets for removal, and a lot of times people don't run much land removal. So if somebody's going to kill it once, you can play this, get it right back. That could be backbreaking. To be honest, if you can get Glacial Chasm and it's been removed once or twice, and you have things like the Crucible and you have things like this, it's going to make it real hard for people to just keep dealing with your lands coming back. All right, so that's going to do it for all the card categories. Now we're going to get into my favorite part, and for this deck, really my favorite part, and it's how to win the game, the game-winning step. All right, so I'm going to go over 3 primary ways to do it, and with this deck, there might be a whole lot more than that. The first way is going to be with a card called Nullspine Dragon. I read this card, and I had to read it like 7 times. I was like, there's no way. This is so powerful. So when it ETBs, you discard your hand, and then draw a card for each damage dealt to target opponent this turn. Yes, it says that. So essentially what this lets you do is, this might not win the whole game, but it could definitely just go ahead and kill a player, and I'll call that a win. It is ridiculous, and really it could take out the table if it got there, because let's say you've got 4 or 5 lands in hand. That's really easy to do in this deck. Let's say you discard them all to Borborygmos, throw everything. You got the 5 lands, that's 15 damage. You just threw 15 damage to someone's face. This comes into play. You discard your hand if you have anything left. Draw 15 cards, and plenty of which will be lands. At that point, why not do it again, discard a whole bunch, and then just take somebody out. And that's if, if they're at 40, that can get home. This is ridiculous. And if people are at lower life totals and you get to the end of the game, this will just finish things off. Now, the second way, and probably not the most exciting way, is just smashing face with a giant cruel Cyclops. It's a 7/6 trampler. And now this is definitely not going to be the primary way, but I think people underrate combat in Commander sometimes. There's so many cool and exciting things going on with this card, it's really easy to ignore the fact you can just smash you in the face if you're not careful. And again, life totals get low, board state stall. When you got a big 7/6 trampler swinging at your face, you're either chump block and get rid of all your creatures, but that commander damage is going to add up, and you can just take people out with this card. And then the last way to win the game should be the least surprising. We're throwing lands at people's faces. That's how we're going to get in there. That's how we're going to end it. Now, I've already mentioned a lot of the ways kind of through the video how exactly we're going to be tossing lands at people's faces and ending the game. But there's one way specifically, one card definitely noticed that I left out, and that is Grafted Exoskeleton. Now, I've probably talked about this about 15 times on this channel. I feel like it has to be. I love this card so much. I put it in any deck I can. And you equip it to a creature. It gives it +2/+2. I'm not worried about that, but it gives it Infect. And of course, with Borborygmos, he is dealing the damage. The best thing about Grafted Exoskeleton in this deck is it actually synergizes with 2 cards. The first is that Tunneling Geopede. That card actually deals the damage. We mentioned it earlier, and if you equip it with Grafted Exoskeleton, all of a sudden you play a land, everybody gets a poison counter. Or all your opponents do at least. And it's real easy to get 10 lands in play and just infect the whole table out. But that's not even the best way to infect people out. And of course the best way is with Borborygmos himself. A big poison-oozing Phyrexian perfected Cyclops. I really don't know what else you could ever want. And you equip it with this Grafted Exoskeleton. You're throwing lands to get 3 poison counters onto somebody. So that literally just means, throw 4 lands, kill target opponent. This is ridiculous. We've already gone over ways. There's a lot of ways to throw a whole lot more than 4 lands. Whew. And you're just throwing Infect everywhere. The coolest thing about this is not only can you infect players out, but when you throw that damage onto creatures, they're getting -1 counters because it's dealing poison damage. This is so good. It's just, oh my gosh. If you get grafted exoskeleton out, that game is just gonna, people need to deal with it right away, or stuff is just gonna go downhill for everybody else. -1 counters everywhere. It's just like all the creatures are getting withered. Everybody's got poison. It's just a big gruel poison party. It's not something I ever knew I needed, but I did need it. All right, guys. So that's gonna wrap it up for this week's Deck Tech. Thank you so much to Mason/EDH Dad. First of all, thank you for the deck. This is an amazing deck. I was vaguely aware of Borborygmos. Now I really want to build it. I think I need to build it because this deck seems so much fun. This deck is awesome. I really hope I did it justice. I really hope I was able to point out some of the cooler synergies that you like about the deck. I really do. But yes, on so many levels, Mason, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And to all the other patrons, obviously we love and appreciate y'all as well. Getting a chance to dig into this deck and see all the cool synergies and everything about it was so much fun. So guys, I can't wait to do this again. But until then, I will see you guys next time.